What's up, friends, and welcome back to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy MLB channel. I am Chris Welsh. That is Ryan Womeli. And today we are talking about fantasy baseball dynasty targets. If you love some dynasty baseball, we got you covered. If you have been thinking about getting into the dynasty baseball space, first, do it. Second, we'll help you out with some of our favorite targets from the top end of drafts down to a guy that actually is not even in minor league or major league baseball, a drafted prospect that's going to be coming up soon. We got a lot for you. Mr. Ryan Womeli, we haven't done any baseball recently, but when we do, you and I are doing Dynasty together.
Oh, yeah. We were talking about some off-season baseball shows that we could be doing as a team, and I kind of raised my hand and said, if there's a show I want to be on, it's a Dynasty show with Welsh. It's something I always enjoy talking with you about. Obviously, you have a big well of knowledge, a deep well of knowledge when it comes to prospects and everything. So I always find it very informative and insightful to learn from you. I actually would sort of frame my participation in this episode as, of course, I have thoughts and opinions on these players we're going to be talking about, but when I put together the names from my list that I wanted to choose as targets, part of it is because I do believe in them, and part of it is because I want to hear your feedback and know what you think about these guys too. Am I crazy for including some of these names? Are you in total agreement with some of these names? We'll see how it goes throughout the show. We've got 8 each of them here, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the show and just talking baseball. I mean, it's been several months of football only for me, so it's fun, like a nice refreshing change of pace here to get a little baseball talk going, especially during the winter meetings.
Well, we're going to rewire your brain. It's time to rewire your brain and everybody else that's watching. Not only, I mean, obviously this has like a redraft perspective to it, but these are guys, we've already done a Dynasty Ranks episode. So go back and check it out if you want on the podcast and the YouTube channel. We're kind of going through what my top 100 looks like. These are going to be in the draft target range that go, inside the top 10, all the way out inside the 200. So these are targets in Dynasty that we are heavily in. Obviously, you're going to kind of see that in my ranks. If I'm ranking someone in a Dynasty higher than others, that's, kind of like a pseudo targets. But when being asked that question, these are players that we are jumping into. If you guys want to check out new update coming very, very shortly here, but we've already got the Dynasty ranks over on Fantasy Pros. So go to fantasypros.com. You can check out the MLB section and you can check out the Dynasty ranks. You can see what I've got for a top 150. Updates are coming soon. So if you want to lock in, you can do so, but it is time that we jump in. We have got 8 targets each from high to low. And Ryan, why don't we start with your first one? I was gonna maybe give you some crap about it because this is like your dude, but I think this is a fantastic player to talk about. Number 1 on your Dynasty targets is from your beloved Baltimore Orioles.
It had to be, right. First time talking baseball in a while. It had to be a Baltimore Oriole. It's Gunnar Henderson. I think he could have made a case for a couple different Orioles on this list. Maybe I will do that. Stick around to find out. But the reason that I went with Gunnar is because if you look at these rankings, and this is not going to be a strictly this guy's undervalued episode, but it was something I looked at in terms of what roughly would be the cost to get a player like this, whether in a startup draft or in a trade. Gunnar is not ranked inside the top 10 in our consensus Dynasty rankings on the site, or excuse me, top 12 in the Dynasty rankings on the site. He's not ranked as a first round player. He's just outside. He's 13th, but I think that's wrong. I think he should be in the first round. I know the power was down this last year. It was a weird year in Baltimore for a lot of reasons. Obviously, Brandon Hyde fired early. A lot of players had down seasons. They have the 4th best odds to win the MLB draft lottery coming up later today. Like, it was not the season people expected. So I'm kind of willing to write off a lot of those struggles. They made some changes to the coaching staff that I'm really excited about on the hitter perspective. I'm hoping the power comes back. One thing that Craig Albernaz has talked about, their new manager, is not, obviously they want everybody to get better in as many areas as they can. But rather than over focus on fixing weaknesses, he wants players to lean into what makes them great. And I think with Gunnar, that's going to be hitting more home runs. He hit a lot of balls really hard on the ground last year. If you look at some of the underlying metrics, they're still pretty strong and honestly, like, largely pretty similar to in a lot of areas, not every area, but in a lot of areas, pretty similar to what they were in 2024. But he had 20 fewer homers. He did steal 10 more bases. I think that number could go even higher with Albernaz coming from the Guardians system. I'm expecting a bounce back year where he's a clear first round pick. So if you can get him valued as like a second round type of player in Dynasty, I'm all over it.
So I'm a little bit torn because, like, I loved Gunnar last year and coming into this year, like, this was one of my guys. Incredible bat speed. He's near the tippy top bat speed numbers. Bat speed isn't its own singular correlative stat. And that's a funny thing. And the fun thing about baseball is most of everything is not one. Like a lot of people spend time being like, oh, average is stupid, ERA is stupid. And it's like, all right, you can find singular stats that are maybe stupid. All the ones that you really love, I also don't think can work singularly. I think you have to look at the whole. So the reason I say that is like coming into last year, the thing that you had to love when you put a couple of your favorite stats together was you had a high percentage barrel percentage with a high-end hard hit percentage with an expected batting average that was supportive with a super, super fast bat for a guy that was stealing bases, hitting for average and hitting significant homers. I loved all of those things. We definitely saw a downtick this past year, and I think it opens up the possibility of like, who is Gunnar Henderson? Year one, it was a lot of homers, little stolen bases, average kind of stunk. Last year, it was a bunch of homers with a high-end batting average. And this year, things did drop. He dropped significant barrel percentage. His hard hit rate went down. Nothing crazy or anything like that. But he also struggled versus lefties a little bit more. So I guess my ultimate take is I actually think there's a buy opportunity on Gunnar Henderson. The consensus Dynasty ranks, he's a little bit lower because of me. That I'm going to be one of the heavy ones on that because I am worried that we might be in like a little bit of a capped space of his overall value. But I won't deny that like, regardless of some of those drops, he did decrease his K percentage. He still hit the ball. His average exit velocity was still over 92, which was pretty awesome. And his expected batting average was a little bit higher than where he's at. I think based on a post first round valuation, Gunnar Henderson is a target, and I'm kind of down with it. The player that I have is also a shortstop, and he is ranked higher. But curious at your take on this target, Elly De La Cruz I put on here. Now, Elly De La Cruz is obviously a tremendously valuable player. I think coming into last year, he was seen as like a top 2 or 3 overall guy. Kind of capped out this year. The power numbers stalled out. Significant decrease in stolen bases. He went from 67 down to 37 year over year. Some of the hitting metrics, again, like the best word you can kind of use is like things kind of stalled out. But like Gunnar Henderson, you saw a slight decrease in his barrel percentage. You saw his hard hit rate go down and his expected batting average not quite up. Here's my take on it though. And obviously we've just focused on 2 like super, super high end players. But my take is the perception around Elly De La Cruz is as negative as it's probably been in 18 months, I think, or so, because, he stopped stealing bases and his batting average isn't getting better. And maybe there's not a lot of home run potential. And he did decrease here and there. But ultimately, he also lowered his strikeout percentage by around 6%. My take on it is him having an overall approach change. He lost his ability to pull the ball in the air as much as he was the year prior. But what did he do? He increased his zone contact percentage. He was able to decrease his strikeouts. And I think that was an adjustment into becoming an overall better hitter. He also underperformed against off-speed pitches, which if you look at the expected batting average between fastballs, breaking pitches, and off speed, it's better overall across the board than it was last year. So my point is becoming an overall quality hitter that I think will regain those stolen bases. And I think we can get another 25-50 season out of Elly De La Cruz. So, if he's ranked in the top 4 or 5 by a dynasty owner, that doesn't really help. But I think in some spaces, he's like going after guys like Acuna and Julio Rodriguez. I think there's a lot of upside on Elly De La Cruz. These are 2 valuable, close to first round, though, shortstop targets that I would, whether it's a refresh or a normal dynasty league, I'd be looking to trade for.
I think these guys, I don't think we get much argument with this. I think they're very clearly, the second and third best shortstops you can have a dynasty. Obviously, Bobby Witt Jr. being the other guy inside that top 3. If this was like a tapering off down season, like still getting 22 homers and 37 stolen bases and a non-cratering batting average is like, sure, like if that's the downside. And if you want to frame for both these guys, really, because I think you could talk about them in tandem. If you wanted to frame Gunnar and Elly as like having these steps back in some fashion this season, they were 23 and 24, 22 and 23. Like, I don't know when Ellie's birthday is, but very, very young.
Yeah.
And that's okay to have a step back when you're still getting some level of production. I have very little doubt in my mind that both of these shortstops can outperform where they're currently being valued. over the next half decade, and I think they're good buys, both of them. I agree. Like Elly should be ranked higher than Gunnar, but I think they should be pretty close. And again, Witt is the only shortstop, like really even in the conversation for me with these two.
Yeah, and I think like there's a handful of players. Like I had thought about Jackson Churio was another one of those. It's a guy that's kind of fallen out of the first round of a lot of like dynasty valuations that I think is super fascinating. And again, we're not like breaking news on these top two guys, but these are two high-end players that I think there's some extra valuation on. All right, well, let's go to number 2 on both of our list, and this will be an interesting collection. You're actually going to jump in with your first pitcher that's going to jump on the board. Pitchers in Dynasty are always like a little bit dicey, but I actually think it's even better that we're having this conversation of targets, because it's like, I lean in Dynasty to give me some of the older pitchers that are devalued because of their age. I think those are some of the better values. But you and I have both picked a couple young pitchers. So my number 2 is not going to be a pitcher, but yours is. So come in with your number 2 Dynasty target, starting pitcher in the NL.
Yeah, and by the way, just like in terms of how these are numbered, I basically put them in order of where they are ranked in the consensus ranking. So there might be guys later that like I like better at cost. I just want to kind of clarify for that, everybody. But the number 2 guy that we're talking about here, Hunter Greene, a player that I loved coming into last season. I was all over Hunter Greene in 2025 drafts, and it looked really good, early on. Of course, the injury bug strikes again. He ended up just pitching 107 and 2/3 innings. The most he's pitched in his career was 150 and a third innings in 2024. So the durability stuff has been a concern. Obviously, he throws so hard that will kind of always be in the back of your mind, especially when thinking about it from the Dynasty perspective. But Hunter Greene was very good last year when healthy, in the same way he was very good if you look at his 2024 stats. In fact, it was better than his 2024 stats when he was actually pitching. His ERA was almost identical, 275 the year before, 276 last year. Expected ERA was almost identical as well, just over 3. His FIP was better by about 0.2 of a run, and his expected FIP, just looking up on Fangraphs, better by almost a full run. He's just a very, very good pitcher. And I think it's notable that his home run to fly ball rate actually almost doubled from 2024 to 2025, and it didn't, have a large impact on the runs he was allowing. It was still the same ERA, so maybe a little bit of flukiness there. It was a pretty low number in 2024. I would expect going forward his home run rate to be closer to what it was in 2025, honestly. But the point is, it didn't matter. He didn't need that fluky low rate to not be allowing lots of runs. Strikes out a lot of batters, really good pitcher, and he's ranked outside the top 50. And I recognize that there is always going to be a durability concern with him and just with all pitchers in general from a Dynasty perspective. But dude is going into his 26 season, is really, really good. I'm hoping he's healthy and you can get him for ranked just outside the top 50. I'm in on that.
Yeah, and something I would note too, maybe the most important aspects that are attached to his health. Here are his velo increases. His four-seam fastball went from 97.6 the prior year to 99.5. That is a 2 mile per hour increase on his four-seam fastball. Even though he didn't have like a big whiff increase on it, but that came with his slider. His slider was 86.8 the year prior, 89.7. So that is a 3 mile per hour increase. That also saw a 7% whiff increase, and hitters only had a batting average of 156 against it. And then he also upticked his split finger, which he started adding, I believe, the year prior. He started throwing that in a little bit more. So it's a true 3-pitch arsenal. There's just some injury issues and not favorable ballpark, but he is still young and like the prime might still be in front of him. Coming in at number...
He did. I want to just quickly ask you, Welsh, on Greene. There was a big... Not a big, but there was a change in his walk rate. He was in 9% range each of his first 3 seasons, and then down to 6% last year. Do you think that's something that we're gonna look back on as fluky, or do you think that is sustainable for him? Because I do think that helped him a lot.
Yeah, I think that's sustainable. I mean, but also like we'll know. I think we'll know pretty early on if that walk rate jumps over 9-10%, and he's less effective with the slider. I think him throwing harder and I mean, really, like the fastball is going to be a big key to it. Is if he is going to be able to have that level of fastball that he had, he's going to find success with his other pitches. He had a 20 run value on his fastball. That might be one of the highest in all of baseball. So that's an incredibly intensely good number. So coming in at number 2 for me, this is a big named young player, and this is kind of like in the Elly range, and I'm going to start ticking down in my valuations of players, but I just want to continuously hit this one home. This is a player that comes in around the second round of Dynasty, and it is Roman Anthony. Roman Anthony, anywhere between 15 and 25, I think, on most Dynasty valuations, and a new refreshed Dynasty draft. I think drafting him in the second round has immensely great value. But my big key, and I've been on this for like 8 months. When I look at Roman Anthony, I see a profile that is absolutely representative of what we got out of Nick Kurtz. But Nick Kurtz had the big counting stats, obviously 30 plus homers and all that, a little concerning K percentage, but everything was great. You look at Roman Anthony, he didn't qualify, but his percentiles, his hard hit percentage would be one of the hardest in the league. And by the way, this isn't a guy that just had 40 at bats. He had 257 at bats in the majors, had a 60% hard hit rate, a 15.5% barrel rate. Those are elite of elite. And remember what I talked about before? You're looking for those connections. Add that with one of the fastest bats in baseball, around 75 miles per hour, a little over 75 miles per hour, which is fantastic. He doesn't get the ball in the air a ton right now, but he hits it incredibly hard. He's got a batting average that's pretty supportive. A not great K percentage at 27%, but he's pairing that with a 13% walk rate. These are better than Nick Kurtz. My main point to this is I think Roman Anthony is just a step away from being what Nick Kurtz is right now, and you're getting a round value out of him. I think he's one of the next big premium young superstars. He's 21 years old. He's hitting at the top of the Red Sox lineup, wherever that's going to be. And I think maybe, not in all instances, I just want everyone to be aware of that. In some instances, because of the lack of counting stats, Roman Anthony's value might not be equated to where it should be. There are some people that are going to be on it and they're going to know it and they're going to be like, nope, Roman Anthony's a first round value. But if you're talking in the trade market, I would love to get some Roman Anthony because I think you can sell a little bit of what the Red Sox are and what his counting stats were not. But the underlying profile is there is an elite player that really shouldn't have a major gap between him and Nick Kurtz. So I love Roman Anthony. He's definitely a dynasty target in whatever capacity.
I think totally agreed. Great call. Very, very high expectations for Anthony moving forward for me. Like, even if he had been worse this last year, I would still be interested in buying him. Just like when you have that kind of pedigree, I'm always going to be interested in that, going into year two. After getting through that kind of initial adjustment period. Mayor and I talked in the cycle a lot about just like how consistent it is that these top prospects need their adjustment periods when they first get up to the big leagues these days. And if anybody is at all anchored to his slow start, like in June, take advantage of that. And if they're not, it doesn't hurt to try. But like, I agree that it's a great target.
Yeah. And by the way, he had 210 in June. He proceeded to hit over 300 the next 3 months of the season while also hitting lefties and righties and lefties. Fantastic, like 278 or more. It's really great. All right. We've got more names coming up, but we want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by our sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there is still time for you to get 150 in bonus bets if you win. Here's all you got to do. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you're going to not only get your winnings, but 150 in extra bonus bets. All you got to do is go download the Hard Rock Bet app, make your first deposit today. Go and check it out, Hard Rock Bet. All right, number 3 on the list. You have a very polarizing player. This is an anti-Joe Pisapia player that's going to come up. And then it's going to be followed by one of the most attached to me Welsh players from last season. But sell us, and I'm going to give it away, sell us on Michael Harris as number 3, at least from the valuation standpoint of your dynasty targets.
Yeah, this was the one that I was expecting some real pushback on here. So I'll be curious to see what folks in the comments think of this in addition to what you think. The thing with Harris for me is like, this is somebody that was going, as an early-ish round pick last year. He is 24 years old. He had stretches where he looked kind of like the guy that we saw when he first came into Major League Baseball, particularly in July and August. He was really, really good this last season. And I want to invest in players who are still young, who have shown flashes of being really productive in fantasy, who are ranked outside the top 100. He's 110th in the early consensus, dynasty rankings here. And being outside the top 100, I am just very in on him. Again, the second half of the year was definitely better than it was in the first, particularly in July and August. In July, he hit 301. His OPS was 850. In August, it was even better. He hit 311. His OPS was 885. He had 8 home runs in August. It would not surprise me if we get to the end of this season and we say, hey, some of these struggles that Harris had were a guy who was 22, 23 years old, figuring it out. We know he kind of came in hot to start his big league career, have 19 home runs and 20 stolen bases back in 2022. He was 21 years old. I think it's reasonable that he might have had some ups and downs in the years since then. He has had exactly 20 stolen bases in 3 of his 4 seasons in Major League Baseball. He's had between 16 and 20 home runs in those 4 seasons. So there's a level of consistency in terms of the power speed that I think there is still upside for, given that he is only 24 years old. This past season, we've seen him hit nearly 300 twice. I know it was the worst average that we saw this last year, but it was a really, really slow start to the year that kind of dragged him down throughout that second half. So it's less that, hey, I found this one stat and it's why I'm buying and you should be too. And it's more, this is a guy that I am willing to bet on at the cost that it's going to take. And I think that there is a real ceiling there. Maybe not he's ever going to be a first round pick type of ceiling, but a getting value for where he's ranked type of a ceiling.
Yeah, there could almost have a theme that's going to go on, because I think like my next 2 players are going to come up are kind of like, I just love the valuation of it. And I'm going to tell you, I'm actually with you on this one, because I think Michael Harris's value is so low because he has not had a season where it's like he's beating the expectations. We've had continuous years of like, oh, look what he did. Could we do? Nope. And then it kind of falls apart. So I think there's a fatigue factor that's going on. What I'll say about Michael Harris, I'm impressed that he was statistically still able to have this great year while kind of struggling. I mean, he had a 2020 season while having, his worst batting average year, but it can't be understated, like you mentioned, of how bad the first and second half splits are. He hit 210 in the first half pre-All-Star break, 158, 247, 245, and 148 through June. Horrifically bad. Then a monstrous comeback in the second half, hitting 299, hitting 300 both June and August. Unfortunately, it kind of fell apart in September, but the power numbers really jumped up in the second half as well. And the expected home run totals, if you look at Baseball Savant, it's actually giving him almost 2 more homers than he hit. I'd also say the contact percentage went way up. According to Baseball Savant, 81.6% zone contact percentage in 2024, 88.2 this past season, heavily affected by the second half. And I don't know if this is going to be a trend. Sometimes when you look at like actual numbers versus expected numbers, you could do it with BABIP too. There are just players that underperform. Like if you see a guy's batting average is this and their expected is this, but it does it every single year, he's just traditionally going to be a player that underperforms. I'm saying this because last year hit 257 against fastballs, 298 expected against fastballs. It was almost the same as this past year. So there is this underperforming factor of him seeing fastballs that he's continuously doing, but he's starting to hit the ball a little bit harder. And the secondaries are he actually has a 250 expected batting average against every single pitch type or better. So I think he's like a solid hitter. I think the value is really good. So I'm with you on Michael Harris, even though he's not like a super popular name. Now, a super popular name last year, someone I really, really liked, was Spencer Schwellenbach. Obviously, injury took him out for the season. Before he ended up getting hurt, he did have 17 starts under his belt, 110 innings, had a sub 1 whip, but the K percentage kind of took a little bit of a downtick. He went from 25.4 down to 24.9. But at the end of the day, like, who Spencer Schwellenbach was and why we were buying on him was still in play. Super low walk guy, only 4.1% walk percentage. His ERA was good. His expected ERA numbers looked really solid. His slider was getting hit like a tiny bit up, but everything else, low batting averages against, is actually under 250 on every pitch type that he throws. And by the way, he threw 6 different pitches, 10% or more of the time. High whiff percentages on his top 3 usage pitches. And he just, the injury took him out. We saw velo increases last year. My biggest worry would be that he doesn't have that stuff coming off of an injury, but I think he's a phenomenal price because of the lost year or the lost half part of the season. This is a guy that's like an easy top 10 Dynasty SP, and I think he might have moved out of that market. So I'm really on a buyback of Spencer Schwellenbach to recoup. I don't know if you have any feelings on him though.
Not strong feelings. I agree with the call. I was going to ask you, like, what kind of ceiling you would have on Schwellenbach. Like, if like best case scenario, like this thing goes, fully healthy as well as we can hope for next year, do you think there's like a SP2, SP3 type of finish like in the cards for him?
Like overall SP?
Overall.
Okay.
Yeah, overall. Or do you think it's more like, I think this guy's going to consistently be in the back half of the top 10 and he's a value at that rating right now?
It might be a little bit more of that. I think Brian Wu is a prime example of it. Brian Wu was like, hey, look at these really, good ERA, low walks, 21% K percentage. But if he can be a little bit more aggressive and then he can add K percentage, well, this year I think it was like 27%. That's the same thing I think can happen. We saw a whiff increase for Schwellenbach on his four seam, his slider, and his split finger. His top three pitches that he uses all had increase. Well, I guess his split finger he used more this year, so that's kind of a lie. It's about the same. It's in the 40s. But you saw with increases, and maybe the point of that is he started using his split finger as the third most used pitch, which was the number one whiff pitch. So my point is like, you got a guy that has incredible command, runs low ERAs, runs low whips, doesn't walk players, and he's got pitches that are increasing that K percentage. So what's the upside? I think the upside is like where Brian Wu, like 27, 28% K, really low walks on a team that's going to have a lot of run support. Two Braves players we're picking. I think the upside though is like, can he beat Crochet, Skubal, and Skeens? Nah. Now you can't do that, but can he be like what we wanted George Kirby to be? Can he be like where Brian Wu is going? I think he can. And I just don't think he's got that hype or that excitement. That's what is kind of most fascinating. Speaking of fascinating, you picked a super, super crazy one. No power, all speed. Number 4 on your list is this outfielder that a lot of people I think is gonna be polarizing in drafts, in redraft, because you're drafting knowing that you're taking an albatross in some spots.
I am just sort of philosophically comfortable with taking somebody who is a 0 in some categories if I know that they are truly elite, not really good, not, one of the best, truly elite difference maker in another category. And I think Chandler Simpson is that. So the caveat here is some people have like, you might be in like a dynasty points league where there's like specific scoring settings where you just can't really afford to have somebody who has no power. So the caveat is if you're in that type of league, obviously don't, go out and aggressively get Chandler Simpson. I recognize that there are leagues where this will not work. But if you have a team where you are capable of handling or scoring setting where you're capable of handling getting a complete, like literally a 0 in a category like home runs, I think he can steal, I think 50 stolen bases in a full season is likely for him. I think it's possible to aim even higher. I don't see why he couldn't get 80 if the Rays let him. And it's not like that's his only category because he hits for a high batting average. He doesn't hit the ball very hard, but he was pretty consistent like month to month. Looking through last season, obviously these are somewhat smaller plate appearance numbers because he wasn't in the big leagues the whole season, but batting average by month, 300, 277, 318, 310, 277, 308. It wasn't like he was carried by a particularly hot month. It was consistently a good batting average. I'm hopeful that we'll see as he gets kind of more used to big league pitching that maybe the batting numbers actually get even better. And the more he gets on base, of course, the more he can do what you really have him for, which is the steals. And hopefully maybe score some more runs as well. He scored 53 runs last year. So in a categories format, I would hope that number would go up too. But really what this is I am somebody who likes going after these mega elite in a specific category. As long as they aren't 0s everywhere else, they can be 0 at least one other place. He is a 0 in power. He's obviously not a 0 in something like batting average. I think he can score more runs and I'd be surprised if he didn't lead the league in stolen bases, frankly. And this is a guy who's ranked outside the top 130. So I get that the last two, in particular, Michael Harris and then Chandler Simpson is like gonna maybe raise some eyebrows here, but these are the types of players that I like going after.
Yeah, I think he's interesting. He's a 3-category player. You're hoping that he can be more of an elite runs guy. He's a great batting average, great stolen base guy. I completely agree. I think he's a league-leading stolen base player because high batting average, it's supported by his expected numbers, does not strike, also does not strike out, does not whiff. You'd love to see him get on base a little bit more with his walks. He only had around a 4% walk rate. But if you saw an increase to like, if he could double that to 8%, keep his batting average, I think he'd be a high-end 3-category player. It's a little bit more nuanced, but if you want to win stolen bases every single week, and I have said this for a couple of years, I think batting average is the most forgot in draft statistical category over the last couple of years, where it used to kind of be this thing where people are like, could you even punt it in Roto? Now it's to the point where it's like, I just don't think enough attention, and it's something you can capture is my main point. It's like batting average is something you can capture, whether it's a head-to-head or a Roto format, and Chandler Simpson helps you. Another Florida outfielder is my pick. I love me some Kyle Stowers. Kyle Stowers, you know Kyle Stowers very well, as a traded Baltimore Orioles prospect over to the Marlins. This past year, an absolutely beautiful hitting profile. He's got some K problems. He struck out 27% of the time. He's got some whiff problems. But if you want the combinations, you're going to see me a lot. Like, give me high barrel, give me hard hit, and then you put some bat speed. He clicks all of those. One of the best barrel rates in the league at 19% this past year. Batting average is pretty supported. He hit 288 with a 270, hit 25 homers in just under 400 at bats, chips in a couple stolen bases. I think you're looking at a perennial 30-10 guy, if not just 30 homers. He's going to chip in on the runs and RBI. Marlins are trying to be a little bit more aggressive in general, and I think he's a middle of the order bat that I want out there really at every single point. I just love the profile. He's also not just like a fastball hitter. He kind of hit across the board, 295 against fastballs, 273 against breaking pitches, and 288 against off speed. Love that. Pulls the ball in the air. Kyle Stowers, that's my guy. I think his name value is just lower. I think he's got upside to be a top 50 dynasty guy, and I think he's valued somewhere like outside the top 75, maybe even top 100, just because people haven't caught on. So love me some Kyle Stowers.
Who do you think won that trade? Because obviously for a while it looked very obvious that it was the Marlins. By the way, it was
I don't even remember what it was.
Norby.
What was
it? Was Stowers and Connor Norby.
Yeah.
And so at first it's like, okay, for Trevor Rogers, right? Yes, yeah. Who was not good early, obviously, but was like basically looks like the AL Cy Young the second half of the season. Like, I mean, it's really interesting how that trade is kind of shaped from when it happened, because Stowers is a guy who I liked and a lot of Orioles fans liked, but there was just clearly no room for him in this crowded prospect pipeline in Baltimore. Like, it was very fair to trade him, even if you liked him as a prospect. Now, he was better last year than I expected him to be, but to your point, like it happening in Miami, him not having maybe the same level of prospect pedigree as some of these other guys. I do think that some of the name value isn't quite there, but I think it's really fun. I actually like consider talking about Rogers today. It ended up not really being a fit for my list, but he's really fascinating because he had such an insane second half. So Stowers and Rogers both being in that trade, I think is kind of really interesting to look at.
Yeah, I think it makes it better. It's almost like Gallon Jazz-ish, where it was like, oh, this trade just works. Or, you know, the Diamondbacks, I mean, I guess I'm talking Diamondbacks, you're talking Orioles, but the Diamondbacks also did the like VAR show for Gabriel Moreno, Lourdes, and it's like, oh, these trades just kind of work out. I think that's a workout for both sides trade because Trevor Rogers has popped back, but I'll take the Marlins side because I think Connor Norby's pretty underrated as well.
Yeah, I like Norby too.
Yeah, and love Kyle Stowers. All right, number 5 on the list, big pop this season for this player, and in redraft he is being valued by virtue of players that have been pushed off the position. It's like the number 2 or 3 overall second baseman. You're going with Brice Turang as a dynasty target.
Yeah, and this is one where I mentioned at the top of the show that I was really curious to hear your opinion on some of my names. I would say Michael Harris is one of those names, and Turang is another where, you know, it's interesting because he's still pretty young. He's like 26, I think, and yet in Dynasty, he's ranked lower than he is in redraft. He's down at like 2B8. He's 140th overall in the consensus rankings I'm looking at right now. And I just think that's too low. This is somebody who maybe the home runs come down to earth, you know, back a little, but like I thought he looked just like a better power hitter this season. Obviously going from 7 home runs in 2024 to 18 in 2025. The stolen bases came down, but they were still, you know, in the mid 20s. I think there's room for that to get back over 30. It would not surprise me if this upcoming season, you know, he takes maybe if the power jump is real, it wouldn't surprise me if he maybe gets close to like a 25-30 type of season. that's the high end outcome, right? I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen. The batting average got better too. It was 288. His expected batting average was down at 264. So a little bit of regression possible there, but it was still higher than it had been the previous couple of seasons. And this was somebody who was, first round draft pick. And I believe the sentiment was that he kind of fell a bit in 2018. He was expected to go higher than he did. He went 21st overall in that draft class. So somebody with a bit of pedigree who it felt like takes a step forward. This would not be the first time somebody in their mid-20s developed some new power we hadn't seen before. Still kept some of the speed. The Brewers are a team that are going to be willing to run. So I just really like Turang, and I think he's undervalued. And I'm really, like I said, most of all, kind of curious what you think about him.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reason to be excited about Brice Turang. He's still only 26 years old. You're kind of stepping into the prime. He took big steps this past year, obviously, as you mentioned. Like, he tripled his barrel percentage. He hit the ball hard, 47%. The year prior, it was 29%. I think the big key is he changed the profile of the hitter that he was. With that, though, it cost some stuff. His Ks went up from 17 to 20, almost 23%. He lost significant zone contact percentage from like 90 down to 84%. And I think the reason I bring those up is I don't personally really buy the power with Brice Turang. Like, I don't know if I buy the bat. I think guy stole 50 bases. Like, he can steal 30. So the argument of like, I think he could be a 15-30 guy, and I think that makes him relatively valuable. The problem is I still think he's playing at a premium position. I think that boosts his value to a level that I don't particularly like, because I don't really buy the power. It's low barrel. It's not elite hard hit. He doesn't pull the ball a whole bunch. He doesn't get the ball in the air either. I used to not believe in guys like CJ Abrams, but the thing that Abrams would do, even though he would have like a 6-7% barrel percentage and weird hard hit rate, dude would get the ball in the air. He'd lift it 16, 17 degree launch angle. Turang doesn't really do that. So I think his homers are kind of volatile. But listen, if he's a 85 guy with 12 to 15 homers, 30 stolen bases, and a 280-90 average, he's valuable. I just don't know if he'll be worth because of the position specifically. Another guy who's getting a ton of hype this year, and boy, there's a lot of trade rumors, and the trade stuff could even make him go up. I don't know if it'll matter, but it's a 26-year-old pitcher that I love. It's Emmet Sheehan. I've just refallen in love with Emmet Sheehan. 2.82 ERA this past year in 12 games started, 15 total he played in. Had a .97 whip, so a sub-1 whip. Almost 31% K percentage, 7% walk rate. His expected ERA is supportive of where he was at. You gotta love his slider had a 43% whiff percentage. He was really good with it last year. No pitch he threw double-digit percentage of the time. So it's 3 pitches, four-seam fastball, slider, and changeup. Had a batting average over 215. In fact, 2 of them were under 200. His stuff just looked elite. He was punching out guys left and right. Looks like a front-ish line type of starter. And I just don't think the perception has caught up with him as well, though there are rumors of like, would the Dodgers make a splash and Sheehan would be at the forefront of it? They may not, and they just may let him be a full-on starter this season. And I think there's just absolute win potential with high-end K percentage if he stays with the Dodgers. There's just a lot to like about Emmet Sheehan. He's the type of guy that's got well inside the top 100 value that maybe he's just not there in a lot of perceived dynasty leagues. So I think he could be got, and that would be a player I'd be trying to target, whether it's redraft or in trades right now, is Emmet Sheehan, because we might be going into the next stratosphere of his value very soon.
He's definitely a good pitcher. Like, I totally agree. You made the sale. I'm not arguing that. Do you have any concerns just with investing in dynasty in general with Dodgers pitching, just because they're so deep and some of the usage stuff, like, could very easily do a phantom injury? The regular season doesn't matter to this team, let alone the fact that maybe he could get traded to a worse team that has fewer win opportunities. I guess, like, for me, it's just like, I'm not even saying that this is a bad investment. I don't disagree with the pick. I'm just curious, like, any consternation on the usage and like, how many innings are we actually going to get out of Emmet Sheehan?
I think it's a fair question, because they'll roll out like 6-man rotations, and Ohtani obviously takes up some space. I almost view Emmet Sheehan similar to the same vibe of Andy Pajes. Remember when Pajes was like coming up and they're like, yeah, he's good and he can hit some homers, but man, they got so many players and platoons and how are they going to find a spot? And they spend money and then all of a sudden like he did. And he had like 20 plus homers and double digit stolen base and it just like he came through. I think you can have all the questions about Emmet Sheehan, but it also looks like if he stays on this team, he's just a guy that's going to be entrenched in that rotation. Now, you know, like if they go to a 6-man rotation, that's less than ideal and they could baby players and stuff like that. I think those are fair questions. It just doesn't really take away from like, I focus in Dynasty more on the talent than I am like a short-term destination or a short-term issue that they're dealing with. Like talent is going to pop through. So I don't want to pay like a top 50 value, top 15 SP or anything like that. But like, if Sheehan can do what he did again this year, even if he's a 3.5 ERA guy, 30% K percentage, like he's going to strike out 200. So I want to be kind of aggressive on him, but it is a super, super fair question that you're bringing up. Speaking of guys like Emmet Sheehan, Brice Turang, how do you guys prepare in your drafts? Well, you do it with the Draft Wizard because championships are won at the draft, and that's where Fantasy Pros MLB Draft Wizard gives you the edge. You can sync your leagues in seconds and run realistic mock drafts using your exact league settings. Our tools show you who you should take next, and the odds your favorite players will still be on the board. And if you're in a pinch, you can even ask Coach for real-time advice tailored to your drafts. Plus, you can view player news, projections, build your own tiered cheat sheets. Draft like a pro with Fantasy Pros MLB Draft Wizard at fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard. That is fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard. All right. Taking us home with our final ones, we're really going to open up the weirdness, and that's what Dynasty is all about. Weird draft valuations and stuff like that. We'll pick it up a little bit here. I love this. You have picked a prospect. I'm all about this guy. Number 6 on your list is who?
Aidan Miller of the Phillies, a player who coming out of high school I liked a lot and fell a little bit because he had, I think, was it a wrist injury his senior season? So he didn't get to really hit as much, something like that. And it sapped some of his power. So the Phillies kind of took advantage with him falling in that first round. And I feel like in some of the conversations I've had with friends that I play Dynasty baseball with, there's a little less shine on Aidan Miller now than there was a year ago. And I don't totally get why. Maybe that's just like the small sample size and it's an anecdotal story and it's not perceived by everybody else. Because if you look at his stats, they're largely like very in line with what he did in 2024. You know, the walk rate went up a couple percentage spots. So did the strikeout rate. You know, if you look at Fangraphs, it's like very, very similar numbers in every category, like isolated power, BABIP. It's like the weighted runs created plus is like within 4 of each other. This is of course at 2 different minor league levels. But it's just remarkable. Like it looks very similar, except for he stole 36 more bases than he did in 2024. So they unlocked his speed and his base running ability in a much different way than they had in his first couple of minor league seasons. And it seems like, and I actually like kind of personally, not that I am some like, super perfect talent evaluator. Personally, I do still feel like he probably should end up at 3rd, but the Phillies are talking about him like he's going to stick at shortstop. Like they're happy with him there. I know when he was drafted, there was talk about him moving, but he has been a shortstop so far through the minors. And if you're going to give me a guy who is in the minors stealing close to 60 bases in a season with 14 home runs, obviously this is in 116 games. This is total he played in 2025. With some of these other numbers I see, like I just don't think that the prospect shine should have come off at all. I still really like Miller. I love investing him in dynasty leagues, and I think he's going to be a really productive player at the big league level, and that could maybe come as soon as this season.
Yeah, I think the team is going to move on from Bohm, and I think that opens up an opportunity. All intents and purposes of maybe what I know, I think the transition is happening to third base. Let me just put it at that.
Okay, I hope that is the case because that's what I want to see.
Yeah, he suffered. He actually had another little injury that kept him from going to the Arizona Fall League, so he could stay healthy. I think he could end up being kind of like a Michael Franco, not that Michael Franco, former Philly third baseman, but Michael Garcia, where it's like you can get the 15 to 20 homers, you can get some elite stolen bases. He stole like to a crazy degree this year. I agree. If there is any prospect shine that's off, I think maybe it's that people just aren't talking about him. We've had an offseason of it's Kevin McGonigal and it's, Jesus Mate and it's Connor Griffin, obviously, that Aidan Miller, like he just kind of whimpered out at the end of the year with the injury, was no Arizona Fall League, but I do think he's a Bohm trade away from being an actual option at the major. So I really do love this one. I have got a former prospect, and this is my next two are very much a buyback opportunity. These players, this one particularly, we'll just say it, Jac Caglianone, he's still got a lot of name value, but boy, this season I think took some of it off where he ended up only being able to hit 157, 237 OBP in over 200 at bats, missed some time, transitioned to the outfield. Obviously there's some great raw skills that are floating out there, but I just think the negativity of like Jac Caglianone was a guy that was probably seen as like a top 2 or 3 overall prospect inside the top 50. I think he's well outside of that. And I think in some spots, his age might be keeping him because he's only 22. But he might be outside the top 100. We did a live show out here in Phoenix, and Eno Saris came on and kind of expressed his love, even in redraft for this season, on Jac Caglianone. And I think that should kind of trickle over into the dynasty spot. The bright spots, because there was just so many negatives, like his batting average stunk. His XBA wasn't great. He did not get the ball in the air. He had a under 171 average against all pitch types. Like those are some big negatives outside of the counting stats. The positives though, 12% barrel rate, one of the fastest bats in baseball. He hit the ball okay from like a hard hit perspective, but only struck out 22% of the time. I think there's a lot that can work in favor of Jac Caglianone. By the way, I'd point out he had a 172 BABIP. That is astronomically low, not even close. Like even on the lower end, guys could be as 250, 260. That is like the, if you want to layman's look at it like as a luck perspective, that it can bounce back in the next direction. Listen, I think Jac Caglianone can hit 240 and hit 30 plus homers in regular playing time, which he will get this year. I think it's a great time to buy on him before everything starts hyping back up. And I would do so with Cags.
Yeah, I agree. Like Caglianone and also the next guy that you have on your list, like I am just a huge fan. It is like probably my number one strategy is buying low on elite prospects who really struggled in their first opportunities in the big leagues. Like and a lot of people like see it the same way. So I'm not saying I'm like going out on a limb here or that you can take advantage in every league with that, but it is just a tried and true strategy that I'm willing to miss on guys that fit that category a few times because I know I'm going to hit big on some other guys. So I'm all in on both of the names that you have here. I know we only talked about one here, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'd also just point out, like, I think it's a really great statement to say. This would be like a classic, like in the comments of, what would be the comment, like, oh, I'd love for someone to trade Jack. And It's like, yeah, well, guess what, buddy? Like, not every league is the same. And there are people that are like really in tuned. There are people that have built-in strategies, but from an overarching perspective, like we want to talk about these things. And I think it is a tried and true, great. It doesn't always work, by the way. Like how many years could you have done it with Jordan Walker and it still doesn't work, or Joe Adell until it finally does. But even in the redraft time, there'll be a lot of people that is like avoid prospects, let people draft them high, then dump them when they stink, and then pick them up when things kind of bounce back. The same should be said in Dynasty. Like, I want to look for some intangible players that had really like maybe poorish debuts and buy them at absolute rock bottom. Jac Caglianone is one of those players that you can get, not quite as the rock bottom as the next guy that I'm going to talk about, but he is in a much, much lower space for a guy that could hit 40 homers in his sleep if things work in the right space. So yes, we may not be speaking to your exact league, you listening or something like that, but we are speaking in the overarching perspective. All right, last two we have in here, and you just could not help yourself in getting a second Oriole.
I had to do it. Dylan Beavers, who I'll go quick on because this isn't the biggest name. I mean, he's ranked outside the top 250 in our consensus dynasty rankings, like probably fairly. I just want to point out that this is the exact type of hitter that this iteration of the Orioles and the player development staff under Mike Elias has hit on with at a very high rate. I think he's kind of going, I think there's a chance that his ultimate production is like an outfielder version of Jordan Westburg. And I just think he's ranked too low. This is not somebody that I think is going to be a top 12 outfielder at any point in his career, right? This is not a dynasty dart throw that I think is going to become a league winner for you. But I think he's ranked too low. I think when we get a full season out of him, I think everybody's going to be really impressed. He's got a very good batting eye. He walked at a high rate with the Orioles in 2025. His walk rate actually went up when he got to the big leagues compared to where it was in the minors. Strikeout rate did go up too. Again, he's not a perfect player, but this is a top 100 prospect right now going into the season. I think so I talked earlier with Stowers how the Orioles had this logjam at outfield. It's really cleared up. So Beavers is going to play every day. And I mean, barring them doing something here in free agency that's surprising, but I think he's going to play every day and get a real opportunity. I think he's going to get on base. I think the lineup's going to be much improved this year, so he's going to score runs and have RBI opportunity. And I think he's just going to be a generally good player. Some of the Orioles fans I know kind of compare him to he's the new Nick Markakis because he's kind of like a stoic figure also off the field. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Nick Markakis, who was an excellent player for a long time, but I just like Beavers. And again, he's the type of player that I really put my trust in the Orioles organization to develop this specific type of hitter. And I'm expecting a good year where as a very, very, very deep dart throw AL Rookie of the Year pick, I don't even hate that. I really think we could see a step forward this year.
Yeah, our buddy Eric Cross feels the same way. He really loves Dylan Beavers. I think there's a lot of good positives in the same vein of what you looked at with what they gave up in Kyle Stowers. They don't give up here. I will say Beavers pulls the ball in the air to an elite level, and that can work really well if the barrel and hard hit numbers come up, and then he might actually be kind of a repeat, a super, super cheap repeat of a Kyle Stowers. All right. So the guy that we were teasing and my second buy was someone I was very much in on last year and was very much wrong about because things did not work out. But I'm going to go back to the well, at least from a dynasty perspective, to buy Dylan Cruz. Dylan Cruz ended a very poorish year. Hit under 300 at bats, did hit 10 homers and 17 stolen bases. The counting stats are actually not that bad. Even if he had kept stinking and you put a full season on him, I mean, extrapolation is almost a 20-30 season. The reason we're jumping back in is, again, yes, there were some super, super negatives on his overall approach. The strikeout rate went up. There were some overall contact issues, especially from breaking pitches that really kind of sunk him. But Dylan Cruz improved his barrel percentage. He had an almost 10%. He improved his average exit velocity. Still kind of low, but 89.7. He improved his max exit velocity. Love to see those things. And he had an expected batting average that was 30 points higher. I think he's way too talented. He's been kind of an all fields type of hitter that I think the power is kind of tough to project, but he was still stealing bases at a pretty elite level. He was essentially top 10 percentile in sprint speed. So given this new opportunity that will probably pop up this year, I think he's got a legitimate chance to come back and be a 20-30 guy, maybe worse 15-25 guy. I think he's going to hit for better average. I think you're going to see some overall improvement. He really struggled against lefties this year, which is, I think, something he can improve on. He hit 40 points lower. He was a little bit better in the second half. This is cratered value. Dylan Cruz is not in top 200s of a lot of dynasty. And if you're willing to give the thought process of Jason Dominguez can turn this around, I think you should be willing to consider that Dylan Cruz can. He's still only 23 years old. I want to buy back my shares of Dylan Cruz, and I want to get at a really cheap cost this year.
I wouldn't even waste time on this. It's the same thing as Caglianone. Like I said, I love buying low on guys with this pedigree. And I'll just say in half a season, he was pacing for a 20-35 season almost. And it was a terrible year. So with a little better performance elsewhere, I think the power speed numbers can be there. Obviously, I think the average can get higher than 208. This was a great hitter at LSU. I totally agree.
All right, final ones on the board here. We are going with some rookies. And why don't I do mine first? Because I think yours is probably the most
unique.
Yeah, polarizing and interesting because he is not a guy that has actually even been drafted. This in the prospect world is one of the, I think there's a couple really, really hot names. Edward Florentino is a really, really popular name, but Edward Florentino is a guy that I think we're talking skyrocketing value. He is seen universally as a top 20 overall prospect in the game. The one I want to throw out to you is Rainiel Rodriguez. This past season, as an 18-year-old, Rainiel Rodriguez hit 20 homers, 276 with a 399 OBP. He's a catcher. I think using him a little bit at first, whatever position, as long as they give him like regular at bats, and he doesn't have like catcher at bats. If he's not catching, he's DHing or first base. I think that's a big positive. But the thing about Rainiel Rodriguez, why you want to buy now, whether he's seen as like a 40th overall prospect or 50th overall prospect, is he has a chance to absolutely rocket this year. Huge hard hit numbers, great max EV, 90th percentile EVs, well above not only like league average, but age to level average. We're talking about like a potential future elite power bat. Now, positionally, like I said, this is like first base or catcher. Maybe at some point it can go to like corner outfield, but the bat is live. This is a prospect that is a little bit ways away, but I think can jump from being like a prospect in the 40s or 50s to being maybe a top 10 overall. Huge power potential from age to level on homers. I mean, 18 years old, put 20 homers up this past season, where a few of these other prospects, Luis Pena, Jesus Mate, Edward Florentino, get a lot of the push. I think Rainiel Rodriguez is a great prospect, especially with that catcher tag, to buy in Dynasty right now. Even though he does cost more, I would want to get my shares, not only from what he could potentially do for me in a couple years, but also the potential trade value. So in refresh, that's the biggest question people have in Dynasty, by the way, is when you start up a new one, how do you compare the young guys to the older guys? I'm a win now guy, so I am more likely to, I'll put higher valuations on like 25, 26-year-old players and stuff like that, but I'm more willing to probably draft some of these older 30-year-old players. If you give me an extra value, if you give me like a round of Jose Ramirez, and if I'm on the wheel and I can get Jose Ramirez, I'll do it. Like, give me a 3-year window. But the reason I'm saying all this is I'm going to build this team that's going to win now. I'm going to want to take a couple shots. Do I want to take a shot on Edward Florentino? Yes, I want to take a shot on Edward Florentino, but do I want to take a shot on a guy that's 3 years away that's going to cost me close to the top 100s? Or do I want to take a shot on a guy that has a potential to be a top 10 prospect that costs me outside of the top 200 when I've already built my roster? Rainiel Rodriguez is perfect for my type of construction for future valuation. So I really like him, and I think people should take a look at him.
I'm not going to pretend to have like a whole deep dive analysis on Rodriguez, but I think it's a great case, and the type of prospect that you describe in terms of like it's a good type of prospect to be targeting in terms of proximity to the majors and ability. Like you can paint a very clear picture of him taking a big leap in rankings this year. Those are the types of guys, like prospects you're going to miss on prospects. Aiming high like this, I think, is really sharp. And like I said, I'm not going to pretend to have like a deep dive here, but but I think it's a smart decision.
Especially when proximity prospects in Dynasty and stuff are going to get like a lot of people are going to be more favorable to proximity. This is a guy that is far away, but doesn't quite have he's got to be a top 10 guy. But I also get the caveat. There are scenarios where someone in the chat's like, okay, well, blah, blah, blah. Okay. You get it. Rainiel Rodriguez is a top 20 valuation from everybody in your league because of said prospect ranker. Okay, that's great. But I think from a universal standpoint, he's not seen in the same space as some of the crazy, like I said, Edward Florentino is an example. And then he's wrapped around these proximity guys. If he's in the 40s or 50s, refresh Dynasty, you can get him later. And maybe you can even get him if you're trying to rebuild. You can sell some veteran guys. Last target up here. Worm decided he's just going to throw caution to the wind and pick a prospect that is not even a professional baseball player. He's a college player, but
he's probably earning some money for NIL, right?
That's definitely earning some NIL money. That's a good point. He is perceivably the number 1 overall pick in this coming year's draft, and you decided to highlight him from a Dynasty target, which I think the intertwining of this is we also need to talk about the valuation of that pick, because not everybody plays an open universe and some people won't have options to next year, but we can take this guy and the valuation of the number 1 overall Dynasty pick in as part of the conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of throw Roch Cholowsky out here because of the level of prospect he is. A lot of evaluators talk about him in the way as like he's the best college shortstop prospect since Troy Tulowitzki, which was over 20 years ago by the time we get to the draft. And He's a very, very good player, very well-rounded. He's going to be the first overall pick in the draft. We are actually like 25 minutes here, Welsh, as of when we're recording this, for finding out who gets the number 1 overall pick.
If he's a White Sox or not, yeah.
Yes. It is if he's an Oriole or not, maybe, fingers crossed. He's just an excellent player. Doesn't have a ton of speed, but pretty much just everything else at a high level. More walks and strikeouts last year at UCLA. 23 home runs playing in the Big Ten. Just like close to a flawless prospect. That can change, right? Like flawless prospects can miss, so there is still risk here. Picking a guy who's playing in the Big Ten, not in the minors or the majors, as a target. But I wanted to highlight him because he is such a strong prospect. And I think he's somebody who's going to move very quickly through the minors once he gets drafted, that I think it is worth positioning yourself, depending on how your league does these drafts, to try to acquire him. In one of my Dynasty leagues, it's, players have salaries attached to them. So he's going to be up for, availability in a salary cap draft format the year he's eligible. For others, it might be just having the number 1 overall pick in a Dynasty, first year player draft. Whatever it is for you, I think he's a player that is worth positioning yourself for, and I think he's going to be really good really quickly. He's that good of a prospect.
So the only thing I'll add in here is Roch 60 grade hit, 60 grade power, maybe into the 65s on both, A+ defender. We still have a college baseball season in front of us. I would at this moment tell you he is a lock top 10 fantasy prospect across most boards. I guess I shouldn't universally say that. I think most will. I think there's a case that Sebastian Walcott kind of goes back and forth. Let's just assume it was Roch versus Walcott. I think there'd be a handful of people, and I might be one of those, that would consider having Roch over Walcott. So that could mean at this moment he would be perceivably like a top 4. I think my buddy James might have, I don't know if he does anymore, but has Walcott at 1 or 2 or whatever. That's a different discussion. But I think Roch is a top, perceivably at this moment, a top 5 prospect in baseball. And he's college, and he's proximity, and he can move fast. And top 5 prospects in Dynasty are usually right around the top 50 overall. So that is, if you have to give up somebody that is outside the top 50 and you could get the 1-1, you should do it. It's a slam dunk. Nothing is a slam dunk. We have a whole season ahead. Plenty of guys have been, those is the universal top guy, and then they fail into the season. This is the bet that I'm making. I'm with you. I'm making this on Roch. So if you can get that number 1 overall pick, or you're in some type of universe where you can do it, he's going to be a great bet, and he's going to be one of the top Dynasty picks. And frankly, if he pushes even heavier, dude could be inside the top 25 a year from now. That was not an unheard of thing. There you go. Those are 16-8 each of us with our Dynasty targets, whether you are new drafting or you're in a league and you're looking for any trades. Who are your targets? Who did you love? Who did you hate of our list? And drop some of your favorite Dynasty targets in the chat. We want to see it below. We'd love to see it in the comments. Make sure you're interacting with us, and give cool prizes away. I'm not saying we're going to do that for this, but you never know. So drop your comments below. Love to hear from you guys. Make sure you go over to Fantasy Pros, whether it's on the app or it's on the website. Get locked in. Early draft ranks, Dynasty ranks. I'll have a new update up there very shortly. Get on the Draft Wizard. Get you guys set for the fantasy baseball season. And most importantly, make sure you're subscribed on the podcast and on YouTube. youtube.com/fantasypros MLB if you want to be on the YouTube. That's going to do it for Ryan Wormley. I'm Chris Welsh. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We'll talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros MLB.